2 Kings 4. The widow's oil. Now a woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, Your servant my husband is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord, and the creditor has come to take my 2 children to be his slaves. So Elisha said to her, What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house? And she said, Your servant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil. Then he said, Go borrow containers elsewhere for yourself, empty containers from all your neighbors. Do not get too few. Then you shall come in and shut the door behind you and your sons, and pour into all these containers, and you shall set aside what is full. So she left him and shut the door behind her and her sons. They began bringing the containers to her, and she poured the oil. When the containers were full, she said to her son, Bring me another container. But he said to her, There are no more containers. Then the oil stopped. So she came and told the man of God. And he said, Go sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your sons can live on the rest. The Shunammite woman. Now a day came when Elisha went over to Shunem, where there was a prominent woman, and she urged him to eat food. And so it was, as often as he passed by, that he turned in there to eat food. And she said to her husband, Behold now, I am aware that this is a holy man of God passing by us repeatedly. Please let's make a little walled upper room, and let's set up a bed for him there, and a table, a chair, and a lampstand. Then it shall be when he comes to us that he can turn in there. Now one day he came there, and turned into the upper room and rested. Then he said to his servant Gehazi, Call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And he said to him, Say now to her, Behold, you have taken trouble for us with all this care. What can I do for you? Would you like me to speak for you to the king, or to the commander of the army? But she answered, I live among my own people. So he said, What then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, It is a fact that she has no son, and her husband is old. He then said, Call her. When he had called her, she stood in the doorway. Then he said, At this season next year, you are going to embrace a son. And she said, No, my lord, you man of God, do not lie to your servant. Now the woman conceived and gave birth to a son at that season the next year, as Elisha had told her. The Shunammite's son. When the child was grown, the day came that he went out to his father, to the reapers. And he said to his father, My head, my head. And his father said to his servant, Carry him to his mother. When he had carried him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her lap until noon, and then he died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door behind him and left. Then she called to her husband and said, Please send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys, so that I may run to the man of God and return. But he said, Why are you going to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. So she just said, It will be fine. Then she saddled the donkey and said to her servant, Drive the donkey and go on. Do not slow down the pace for me unless I tell you. So she went on and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When the man of God saw her at a distance, he said to Gehazi his servant, Behold, that person there is the Shunammite. Please run now to meet her and say to her, Is it going well for you? Is it going well for your husband? Is it going well for the child? Then she answered, It is going well. But she came to the man of God at the hill and took hold of his feet. And Gehazi came up to push her away, but the man of God said, Leave her alone, for her soul is troubled within her, and the Lord has concealed it from me and has not informed me. Then she said, Did I ask for a son from my Lord? Did I not say, Do not give me false hope? Then he said to Gehazi, Get ready and take my staff in your hand and go. If you meet anyone, do not greet him, and if anyone greets you, do not reply to him. And lay my staff on the boy's face. The mother of the boy said, As surely as the Lord lives and you yourself live, I will not leave you. So he got up and followed her. Then Gehazi went on ahead of them and laid the staff on the boy's face, but there was no sound or response. So he returned to meet him and informed him, saying, The boy has not awakened. When Elisha entered the house, behold, the boy was dead, laid on his bed. So he entered and shut the door behind them both, and he prayed to the Lord. Then he got up on the bed and lay on the child, and put his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, his hands on his hands, and he bent down on him. And the flesh of the child became warm. Then he returned and walked in the house back and forth once, and went up and bent down on him. And the boy sneezed 7 times, then the boy opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi and said, Call this Shunammite. So he called her. And when she came to him, he said, Pick up your son. Then she came in and fell at his feet and bowed down to the ground, and she picked up her son and left. The poisonous stew. When Elisha returned to Gilgal, there was a famine in the land. As the sons of the prophets were sitting in front of him, he said to his servant, Put on the large pot and boil stew for the sons of the prophets. Then one went out into the field to gather mallow, and found a wild vine and gathered from it his lap full of wild gourds. And he came and sliced them into the pot of stew, because they did not know what they were. So they poured it out for the men to eat. But as they were eating the stew, they cried out and said, You man of God, there is death in the pot. And they were unable to eat. Then he said, Bring flour. And he threw it into the pot and said, Pour it out for the people that they may eat. Then there was nothing harmful in the pot. Now a man came from Baal-shalisha, and brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley and fresh grain in his sack. And Elisha said, Give them to the people that they may eat. But his attendants said, How am I to serve this to 100 men? Nevertheless he said, Give them to the people that they may eat, for this is what the Lord says, They shall eat and have some left over. So he served it to them, and they ate and had some left over, in accordance with the word of the Lord. 2 Kings 5. Naaman is healed. Now Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man in the view of his master, and eminent, because by him the Lord had given victory to Aram. The man was also a valiant warrior, but afflicted with leprosy. Now the Arameans had gone out in bands and had taken captive a little girl from the land of Israel, and she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said to her mistress, If only my master were with the prophet who is in Samaria, then he would cure him of his leprosy. And Naaman went in and told his master, saying, The girl who is from the land of Israel spoke such and such. Then the king of Aram said, Go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothes. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which said, And now as this letter comes to you, behold, I have sent Naaman my servant to you, so that you may cure him of his leprosy. But when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, Am I God to kill and to keep alive, that this man is sending word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? But consider now, and see how he is seeking a quarrel against me. Now it happened when Elisha the man of God heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, that he sent word to the king, saying, Why did you tear your clothes? Just have him come to me, and he shall learn that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses and his chariots, and stood at the doorway of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh will be restored to you and you will be clean. But Naaman was furious and went away, and he said, Behold, I thought, he will certainly come out to me, and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and wave his hand over the sight and cure the leprosy. Are Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, not better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. Then his servants approached and spoke to him, saying, My father, had the prophet told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, Wash and be clean? So he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, in accordance with the word of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. Gehazi's greed. Then he returned to the man of God with all his company, and came and stood before him. And he said, Behold now, I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel, so please accept a gift from your servant now. But he said, As surely as the Lord lives before whom I stand, I will accept nothing. And he urged him to accept it, but he refused. Then Naaman said, If not, please let your servant be given 2 mules' load of earth, for your servant will no longer offer a burnt offering nor a sacrifice to other gods, but to the Lord. Regarding this matter, may the Lord forgive your servant. When my master goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand and I bow down in the house of Rimmon, when I bow down in the house of Rimmon, may the Lord please forgive your servant in this matter. He said to him, Go in peace. So he went some distance from him. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha the man of God, thought, Behold, my master has spared this Naaman the Aramean, by not accepting from his hand what he brought. As the Lord lives, I will run after him and take something from him. So Gehazi pursued Naaman. When Naaman saw someone running after him, he came down from the chariot to meet him and said, Is everything well? And he said, Everything is well. My master has sent me, saying, Behold, just now 2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothes. Naaman said, Be sure to take 2 talents. And he urged him, and tied up 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of clothes, and gave them to 2 of his servants, and they carried them before him. When he came to the hill, he took them from their hand and deposited them in the house. And he sent the men away, and they departed. But he went in and stood before his master. And Elisha said to him, Where have you been, Gehazi? And he said, Your servant went nowhere. Then he said to him, Did my heart not go with you when the man turned from his chariot to meet you? Is it a time to accept money and to accept clothes, olive groves, vineyards, sheep, oxen, and male and female slaves? Therefore, the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and to your descendants forever. So he went out from his presence afflicted with leprosy, as white as snow.